Hello and welcome back to the MLB DFS slate breakdown for Monday, June 24th. We're going to be here. We're going to be breaking it down, and I really do like this slate tonight. I think there's a bunch of interesting ways to attack it, and we are going to go over that all. But first, come join us at LineStar. $39.99 per month gets you access to everything we do, all the props, all the DFS. You get it all, one low price. Now, let's jump into the fun. We're going to start by going over yesterday's perfect lineups and winning lineups. Then we will jump into some pitchers to consider, followed by stacks. Now, let's get into this fun. Think it's a good slate. We got lots to do. We're going to be breaking it down. Let's head over to the perfect lineups to start it out. And we got Sonny Gray on FanDuel as the pitchers you needed. He went absolutely nuts, putting up 52. And the thing that's so crazy to me about his outing, 7 innings and only 80 pitches. Cardinals continue to pull him early, not letting him get into the 90s. But he is super consistent, super efficient. So he just keeps putting up these monster scores. And he has been extremely good this season. So Sonny Gray was the guy you needed. We got a 2-man Toronto stack, a 2-man Detroit stack, and some one-offs from that. Almost used all the salary. 322 was the perfect lineup score. And then the winning lineup went to Meta Boritz, who won $20K with Paul Skeens, who Skeens was the chalk pitcher of the day, going almost 43% owned, but he did just enough, putting up 46. Gray only did a little bit better, so you could absolutely still win with Skeens, as this person did. And then lineup-wise, they went a 4-4 with Houston and Detroit. Houston put up 8, but they had 4 guys really go nuts. Detroit went for 11, and they had themselves a day. So congrats to Meta, and let's get over to DraftKings to check that one out. Now, we had Framber, we had Sonny Gray, 2-man Houston stack, 2-man Detroit stack, got it done, and one-offs outside of that, with the winning lineup going to Pickled Bird, and they had Sonny Gray and Cortez, so they did not have Framber. The pitchers are slightly contrarian here. The hitting lineup was absolutely contrarian. We had a 5-man Detroit stack, who highest owned guy was 15%, 11% to Riley Green, and then the other 3 under 5%, so definitely getting different there. And then we had the 2-man Cleveland stack with Naylor and J-Ram do enough with Yainer Diaz from Houston rounding out the bunch. He won by, solid 7 points, or 6 and change. It was a solid one. So I gotta say, give it up to good old Pickled. And once again, it was that 5-2-1 lineup construction that we end up hammering so much, because that just continues to be the lineup construction that wins. Now, let's get into this slate. Starting on DraftKings, we have Griffin Canning as the highest owned pitcher. This shows big time alarm bells for me. Canning was a guy that I was actually kind of high on coming into this year. I drafted a ton of him in best ball as one of my last picks, just because he has shown the ability to have very good games. That's just not the case this year. This guy has regressed big time. 5.21 FIP over his last 5 starts, 4.99 over his last 20. He just has not looked good, and now he is super chalky versus Oakland offense, who has been bad versus righties, but at least they do have some pop. They can give you some danger, and they are getting a ballpark bump up. Angel Stadium is the number 5 least pitcher-friendly park. We also have winds blowing out to center here. It is a little bit of an interesting spot for bats, and Griffin Canning is going high owned. So I find it very, very hard to want to get to Canning in this spot with him being high owned. He hasn't shown us a ceiling. 21 is the highest that he's had all season. And our most likely outcome is low double digits, something like that. Maybe get into the teens, but that's not going to win you a GPP. It may not lose you one because he's cheap, but it's not going to win it for you. So I don't feel like we have to go to Griffin Canning in this spot, and I don't mind jumping off. He's also been worse at home, 25% less fantasy points at home. Now, it is a good matchup, so we can do well. So I'm not saying, like, if you're feeling it, go for it. I'm just saying for my personal lineups, I'm likely to fade him a little bit. Don't really love the spot for him. Now, next we got Cole Ragans. This game has some wild hitting weather. The winds are blowing out at double digits. It's 100 degrees. This ball is going to fly. Now, Cole Ragans has been extremely good all season long. The one thing, the hitting weather does not matter if the Marlins can't hit him. And the Marlins might not be able to hit him. This guy is a 2.97 FIP over his last 20 starts, 3.19 over his last 5. And those last 5 played the Twins, the Padres, the Mariners, the Dodgers, and then Oakland. Not bad offenses whatsoever, and he still has a 3.19 FIP through that. Solid K rate. The big issue with him that I see today is he allows 47.5% fly balls. Now, we have him at a 2.3x value. He's absolutely one of the higher values that we have on this slate. He's in a good spot. This Marlins team is not good versus lefties. Low ISO, low WOBA. I don't mind taking some shots on Reagan, even with this amazing hitting weather. Now, for him to be one of the higher owned pitchers, I think there is some risk with that, with this type of hitting weather. So he is absolutely in my pool. I am not going to be fading him, but I'm also not going to actively get way more. I'm not going to try and force him into my lineups, but I am 100% interested in this spot on both sides, hitting or pitching. Ragans is just one of the best pitchers on this slate, so I'm going to be getting to him a bit. Ownership in this spot does worry me a little, though. Gotta say that. Justin Steele, lefty versus the Giants. Look, he went against the Giants last week in a amazing weather condition hitting environment, and this is also a good talk for that Cole Reagan situation. This game in Chicago was winds blowing out. It was warm, perfect hitting conditions for Wrigley, but yet Justin Steele went out, put up 6.2 innings, 2 earned runs, and 8 Ks. He is now going to San Francisco where it's cool and the wind's not going to matter that much versus that same poor offense. Now, it is the second time they're seeing him in a week, so that does generally help the offense a little bit, but I think Justin Steele is finally who we saw him as last year. He's definitely hit his stride a little bit, been pitching great, 2.13 FIP through his last 5, 3.16 through his last 20. I think Steele is super, super interesting in this spot. And to me, he should probably be the highest owned pitcher, but he's just not. Right now, he is the third highest. We have him at 2.4x, one of the best values on this slate for pitchers. I'm super intrigued with him, and he's been showing some upside. 26% K rate over the last 20, 25.8 over the last 5. He's in a very, very interesting spot to me. Next, we got Freddie Peralta, another one of the better pitchers on this slate. Game total of 8, and Milwaukee is giant favorite, so there should definitely be a little more interest in Peralta versus the Rangers. We know they're a good offense, but Peralta has been way better at home, and the Rangers haven't been good versus righties lately. 305 WOBA, 133 ISO, and then if you look at the short term, what they've been doing over the last 20 games versus righties, 227 average, 139 ISO, 288 WOBA, so they have been worse than these numbers here, and Peralta's been way better at home. We know he has big time upside. He had a little rough patch, but it looks like he's coming out of that. He just blew away the Angels in 6 innings with 8 Ks. We know the strikeout is upside is there, so he is very interesting, going a little bit lower owned, 24.9% combined K rate for him at 2.1x. I'm definitely intrigued going there. I think going Steele Peralta is a very interesting way to fade some of the higher owned pitchers, but just give you more upside. Not that they're not high owned, they are higher owned, but I definitely like them and feel way more comfortable with those guys than a guy like Griffin Canning. You can take Steele and Peralta, and you're not paying up for pitching too much. Can still get a ton of bats. Next, Garrett Crochet versus the Dodgers. Now, this guy has been unbelievable this year. Now, it is versus a Dodger team that is very good, although it is still without Mookie Betts. But they've been crushing lefties, and I would assume they continue to do that. The one thing is Crochet has been way better at home, averaging 36% more fantasy points at home, and they are home at this time. He has major upside. He has a 40% K rate over his last 5 starts, which is just insane. I don't mind getting to him because there's giant upside. My big issue here is it's versus the Dodgers, and he's getting a little ownership. I would really like this 20% ownership to be less to really want to jump on this bandwagon. And at that ownership, I probably won't be getting to like that much of him in this spot. Now, after him, pitching does really drop off, so maybe you just want to, go there, but I wouldn't be taking him out of my pool. I'm just probably not getting over the field as far as what the ownership is for him. He's a great pitcher, just in a tough spot, and always kind of hard. I generally kind of let ownership dictate my moves in those situations, because just most likely he doesn't have the upside that he normally does, but he's still going to have a solid floor because those strikeouts are going to be there. Next, we got Matt Waldron versus the Nationals, who just haven't been that great. CJ Abrams is back in the lineup, so that gives them a little bit of boost, but he hasn't been great lately. Meanwhile, Waldron has been incredible over the last really month and a half or so. 2.95 FIP, 1.135 ERA over his last 5 starts. K rate is a little low, but he's just been extremely good in a super pitcher-friendly park versus an offense that isn't great. And the knuckleball just isn't a pitch you can really practice hitting against. So it's very tough for batters. Now, I got to say it, I got to give my disclaimer every time he pitches, is that pitch is notoriously inconsistent. However, he is at home, very familiar with the conditions. I think he should be fine with that pitch tonight. But if you're using some Waldron, you should probably be a little safe and have a Washington stack or two, because we have seen him be able to get lit up a little bit when that pitch isn't working. Gave up 5 runs versus Toronto, gave up 8 runs versus Arizona. It's absolutely plausible that the Washington can get to him. While I do really, really like Waldron, this is a spot that I don't mind playing both sides. Waldron's definitely a pitcher, though, in my player pool that I do like. Next, we got Spencer Swallenbach. Look, he's one of their best pitching prospects. He's in an okay spot. This Cardinals team hasn't been great. However, they have been hitting a little bit better. Lately, 190 ISO, 312 WOBA over the last 20 games versus righties. I'm a little bit intrigued with the Cardinals, but also a little intrigued by Swallenbach. He has a FIP of 4 so far with almost a 5 ERA. I think there's some regression to that positive number coming up, and he did show it against the Tigers last time out. Can it happen again versus the Cardinals, who really haven't been that great on offense? Absolutely. So a little intrigued on here, and it's another spot where I don't mind playing both sides a little bit. We know the Cardinals can hit, and they've been hitting a little recently, but Swallenbach could get the best of them. Tanner Huck next versus the Red Sox. Now we do have some hitting conditions. Winds blowing out to right at double digits, low double digits here. Now the wind is a little cross field, but has a hint of blowing out to right as well. So it is going to help hitters for sure. It's warm, very, very hitter-friendly park. But Tanner Huck's been amazing this year. 2.23 FIP over the last 5. 2.69 over his last 20. There's a little bit of strikeout upside. The one issue is, one, he just faced Toronto last week. Two, they have hit him around a little bit. He didn't do great versus him last week. Last year, they got him for 6 runs. And he's just kind of hard to trust at home, also averaging 21% less fantasy points at home. If you see, pretty much all of his big games outside of versus Cleveland have been away. So at his price, we really need one of his ceiling games. The likelihood of us getting 28 plus from him at home just isn't that great, so I understand why he is so low owned. Now, he is super low owned, and he is a very good pitcher. So if I'm getting a little bit of him, I'm fine with it. But it's a tough spot. Next, Kaysen Spires. This guy kind of been all over the place. So he is up to 100 pitches now. Looked absolutely great versus Pittsburgh last week. 6 innings, 5 Ks, 4 earned runs. I do think he gives up a couple earned runs. It is a very hitter-friendly spot. At least he is, more ground balls than fly balls. 39% ground balls, only 30% fly balls, 30% line drives, 30% hard contact. I don't want to use Spears as my pitcher. At his price, there is some upside. We saw him put up 7 Ks versus the Cubs. At 6.4 K, that would definitely get it done. But I do worry the upside is there. If you need a cheap pitcher, you can plug and play. It's not like he's, facing a very good offense. But I'll probably be staying away. Next, we got Lance Lynn. Don't really love Lynn in this spot. Braves are starting to hit. However, we know he has upside if he gets it rolling. I just think 7.9K with how he is pitching is a little too pricey for me, so I'm probably not really going there. Medina, probably not really going there. However, he is 2.4X in a good spot versus the Angels, who just aren't that good, and he's been decent. 3.87 FIP over his last 20, 3.97 over his last 5. Just no strikeout upside, but he's only 5.5K. We admit a 18.7% combined K rate. If he can have one of these games like he faced with Atlanta where he gets, 5-6 Ks and is able to go 6 inning, he starts to look interesting. And Angels aren't that great. So it is a spot that I don't mind sprinkling a little bit of him in, but I would not go overboard. Outside of that, I'm pretty much out on everybody. I don't think I can go or Lorenzen at his cheap price. It's a good offense versus Milwaukee. Roddy Maruno's is just so hit or miss. Crushed the Mets and then got crushed. His splits are just night and day versus righty-lefties, and I don't love the spot versus him in Kansas City. The thing is, super windy, blowing out, and super hot, like 100 degrees, doesn't bode well for him when he's allowing 35% hard contact versus a team that does a lot. He's also allowed a little bit of running recently with the last 5 starts, allowing 2 steals, and 3 of these 5 starts have been pretty bad. 6 runs, 4 runs, 7 runs. So I don't mind picking on him a little bit and falters, whatever. Let's get over to FanDuel here. Try and wrap it up quick with the pitchers so we can get to hitters. All right, highest owned, Cole Ragans. Look, I talked about this spot already. It's a great hitting weather spot. Ragans is an amazing pitcher. But the type of hitting weather we're seeing with 38% ownership is wild to me. This game is going to, or likely could play like a little bit of like a Coors game. I mean, we have a 9.5 total. When you have a good pitcher on the bump in Coors, you're getting a total of like 10.5, right around there. We're not too far off of that. So, do I love going with Ragans in this spot? I mean, I love him as a pitcher. I love his talent. But Miami could definitely get to him. It doesn't take a ton with this type of hitting weather to really make it work when Ragans is allowing 47% fly balls. So, at nearly 40% owned, I have a hard time getting there. I would be surprised if I have more than 25% of him in my lineups. Next, Garrett Crochet, 10.2K, 2.8X. Issues here, the Dodgers. You're taking the second chalkiest pitcher on the slate versus one of the best, if not the best offense in the league. So I have a real hard time doing that. Now he has been better at home, but Dodgers crush lefties. 350 WOBA, 190 ISO. Ohtani's on absolute fire. They have a 301 average versus lefties over the last 20 games. 327 ISO, 416 WOBA. Real hard for me to want to go against that at higher ownership. Next, Freddie Peralta, 9.8K, 18% owned. I like it. Definitely going to have some Freddie P in my lineups. Justin Steele, same spot, but, low owned, 9.5K. Gonna have a lot of him probably. Griffin Canning, it's a good spot. I just don't see enough upside there for me to really want to take him. Lance Lynn, meh. Tanner Huck, he's a low-owned pivot. His projection is high enough that I can see getting him in some lineups, especially at his ownership. It is just a tough spot, as I mentioned, versus Toronto in good hitting weather, where he's not quite as good at home. Can he get it done? Absolutely. So for that reason, he is my pool, but I'm not going to go overboard trying to get him. And Matt Waldron is definitely in my FanDuel pitcher player pool today. He has the upside. He's only 8,300. He's versus this Washington lineup that's not good in a super pitcher-friendly park at home. We saw him put up 55 at home versus Miami, put up 46 last time out versus Philly. The upside is 100% here, and he's just been pitching great, so he's definitely in my pool there. I think pitching on FanDuel is super interesting today, and there's really some different ways to get different with both your stacks and your pitching today. Now let's get into stacks. Let's try and make it a little quicker because we're already at 23 minutes here, and we'll see what we got. We'll start with value due to the fact I have that already selected. Highest value, we got KC versus Rodri Munez. Makes definite sense for me. Munez is a 7.86 FIP over his last 5.57 on the year. He hasn't had 20 starts, so we'll just leave it at on the year there. Oakland popping up versus Griffin Canning makes a lot of sense to me. Griffin Canning's a high-owned pitcher on Detroit. You get some leverage going with Oakland, and Canning's been getting crushed all year. Case Inspires and Pittsburgh is popping up a little bit. That one makes some interesting too. There's some value stacks that make a lot of interest here, which means there is definite ways to get different with these stacks and pay up for pitching. So you can get the stud pitchers. You can get some big-time value stacks. I think it's very interesting, and that's going to just be a little different than a lot of lineups here. So don't mind going that way whatsoever. Miami is also popping up versus Cole Ragans. Now, I don't love stacking against Cole Ragans, but we have spectacular hitting conditions, and he allows a lot of fly balls. So it could go bad for him. I don't mind having a little bit of Miami. Just don't go overboard on them, as it's, lower percentage chance of it actually working out for you. KC versus Pittsburgh absolutely makes some sense with Falter having a 5 FIP over his last 20. And game total of 10 is the highest on the board today. So definitely interest there. Now let's go to the highest owned stacks for today and see how that looks. And we got KC versus Raul Munoz. No surprise there. Now, it is 85% owned. That's not quite enough for me to totally fade it. It's definitely because you can get a KC stack, in mid-60s-ish % ownership. And that's probably what I'd be forcing or trying to happen. I would not put in the most chalky lineup of the slate, but I would absolutely play Royals, trying to get a little different. I do like the Royals in this spot quite a bit with this hitting conditions. They've actually been a solid offense, and they will steal a bag or two as well, which definitely helps for the upside. Now, highest projected lineups for today. Dodgers versus Crochet. Now, I don't love going against him, but this Dodgers lineup can absolutely get it done. Teoscar Hernandez crushes lefties. Ohtani's been crushing everybody. Will Smith is good versus lefties. Freddie Freeman is Freddie Freeman. Definitely intrigued by some Dodger stacks at super low ownership here. Now, this stack is very expensive, so you probably can't get to that one with having a pay-up pitcher, but I am a little intrigued by going that way. Boston's popping up a little bit versus Toronto. Definitely intrigued by that one. We don't know the starting pitcher yet, but that bullpen is not very good. So if you can get to the bullpen in good hitting conditions in Fenway, it becomes pretty interesting. Cincinnati versus Faulkner, very, very interesting as well. And it's nice to see all of these higher projected stacks going fairly low owned. Pretty interesting day to get after it, in my opinion. Next, let's go to the highest ceiling play before we get in a little overview of everything else. And we got Boston and the Dodgers going at highest owned. I am fully on board with those two. I am really on board with pretty much everything this is spitting out so far this morning. So, highest implied run total, we got the Royals at 5.4. We got the Reds at 5.3. Angels at 4.9 versus Luis Medina. Now, the Angels aren't, great, and there's not super high upside there, so I don't love the Angels stack, but I absolutely will have some of them. I think Medina is a decent pitcher. He's just not likely to really work deep into this game. Now, that bullpen in Oakland is decent. So, I don't mind a little bit. Definitely not going overboard. Big time. Love the Boston stack. Pittsburgh, great hitting conditions there in Cincinnati. Spears has been solid, so I don't want to go overboard there, but it is likely that he gives up some runs, so definitely intrigued by them. Atlanta versus Lance Lynn, give it to me. Give it to me all. It's warm in St. Louis. Atlanta's starting to hit. Lance Lynn has been a little bit of a punching bag, even though he has a 3.93 or 98 FIP over his last 5, but his FIP of 4.85 over the last 20 is a little bit scary. Don't mind going there. Milwaukee versus Lorenzen. Texas bullpen's been bad. Interested there. The Cubs have an opener in Eric Miller starting, so he's only going to go 1 or 2 innings, and then you get that Giants bullpen. Not totally sure who long relief is. If it is Spencer Howard, give me some Cubs. The one thing I got to say here, though, is the Cubs' home road splits for hitting is surprising. There is a big difference, and they are just not as good on the road. So that worries me a little bit. Dodgers versus Garrett Crochet. It's the Dodgers. I'm fine to have a little bit. And the Padres versus our favorite punching bag in Patrick Corbin. 5.28 FIP over the last 20, 5.35 over the last 5, allowing a lot of hard contact, high average exit velocity. The bullpen behind him isn't great. I am totally on board with some Padres tonight. Maybe I'm a little bit of a homer, but the team has been hitting. Jackson Merrill's been on absolute fire. I think 8 home runs over the last 10 days or 7 home runs over the last 10 games, something like that. Manny Machado seems to be starting to hit. Have a little worry if Tatis is in the lineup or not, but I'm intrigued with the hitting potential there. 4.3 implied total. That's fine. They're only 1.1 runs off the highest, so definitely a little bit intrigued by going there. And then, there's some leverage stacks down here where you can go to if you want. I think Washington, just due to the fact that Waldron's a knuckleballer, is a little interesting, but I don't love getting there either. St. Louis is a little interesting as well. Outside of that, don't really love the stacks down here. Can have a little Oakland and a little Miami, though. So that'll do it for us today. All in all, I think this is a really, really fun slate, and you could probably tell because I just went 30 minutes. With that, you guys have a good one. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I will talk to you guys soon. Peace!